You're listening to Raising the Bets, a family podcast of pirates and penguins. We're a Catholic family raising 5 kids outside of Boston, sharing the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, our adventures near and far, making sense of the world, and experiencing the best parts of our culture. I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
And I just realized I spelled my name wrong in the intro script.
Wait, but just the script that you use, not that anybody else will see.
No one else will see it. I just realized I misspelled it. Well, it's more like my keyboard misspelled it. I have a keyboard that is doing this weird thing about double typing and not double typing. And yeah, that's not really relevant to our discussion today. But I just thought I'd mention that because it was a funny little thing. So, since last week, quick update, medical update. I need a medical update theme song. My arms no longer look like I'm a leprosy victim or a plague victim with my poison ivy. I think we've all pretty much cleared out from poison ivy, haven't we?
Nobody's really poison ivy-ish anymore.
Knock on wood. I mean, a week of prednisone has helped with that for all of us. I think we're all in the clear for the moment, but we'll see. But we did have another unrelated medical issue that come up this past week. So last weekend, we invited to my brother's house. My brother has a pool, and it's finally summer in New England, warm enough that you can actually swim in the water without chipping the ice away first.
If you are a New Englander, Texans don't do this thing.
Yes, Texans don't swim in the water until it's actually you could make iced tea with it. But okay.
Right.
Yeah, but it was plenty warm, and so I mean, I've swum when it's cold. This was not cold. The water was warm. So
except that Lucia's lips were blue.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to get to. Is we went to the pool. We were swimming all day. You and Isabella actually took the afternoon and went off to do a mother-daughter thing, and so I was there with the other 4, and my brother and his family and some other folks who came by, and we're all swimming. And I noticed that Lucy kept shivering, like the whole time. And I just thought, she's tiny. She gets cold, she shivers.
And the water was not warm.
The water was fine.
It was cold.
It was not cold. Once you get in it, you get used to it. It's fine.
And in other words, it wasn't unusual that the 6-year-old the skinny 6-year-old was shivering.
Yes, the teeny tiny 6-year-old. Well, the other thing is without you there and me trying to be social and watch over 6 kids. How many kids? It seems like there are 6. There were 4 of them. Make sure they don't drown. And the whole shebang. One of the things I didn't do was make sure that they were all drinking enough water. The older ones, they figured it out, but Lucy is still young enough that you got to remind her. And I guess she got dehydrated.
Right.
So what happened? So on the way home,
so she by the time we got to about 5 minutes from home, and it's about half an hour away, I looked back and she was shivering and her lips still looked kind of blue. And I said, "Are you okay, Lucy?" And she said, "I'm cold." Well, it turned out the air conditioner in the car was blasting on her, and she didn't think to actually ask anybody to turn it off. So we got home, we wrapped her in a blanket. She sat on the couch, and half an hour later, she was still shivering. She got up and she ate a little bit of dinner, and then she went back to the couch, and she was still shivering. And about an hour or so after that, I felt her, and she was burning up. And I took her temperature, and she was at 104.
104, yeah. So that's when the decision making kicks in. What do we do?
So I gave her some ibuprofen.
Yeah.
And the temperature seemed to go down, and she fell asleep on our bed, all wrapped up. But then 2 hours later, she woke up crying, and her temperature was back up at 103 again.
Right. Now, I hate to think this, but one of the things that always enters into this is, do we take her to the ER tonight, or do we take her to urgent care in the morning? Because if you take her to the ER, that's $150 right there. Boom. That's the copay for the ER is $150. And I hate that that's a part of it, but that's just the way it is. That's the insurance we have. That's the way things work. And it's not like I hesitated very long. I mean, she was burning up. I mean, got to take her. So you packed her up, and this was after the others were in bed, right?
Yeah, everybody was in bed. It was like 10 o'clock when I finally said, okay, right. I think we need to go to the emergency room because her fever is high and it's not coming down with the ibuprofen.
Right. All right. So you headed out, and then I hung out here, and then around midnight I texted you to see how things were going. I went to bed, and then and I usually when I go to bed when you're still up, I usually leave the light on. And then I woke up, I think around 3, and you still weren't home. The lights were all on, everything, and I'm thinking, oh. And so I tried to contact you. You probably didn't get my text right away. You're probably on Do Not Disturb.
I got it. It was just, I don't have my phone set to bleep or blop when I get a text. So I didn't notice it for a good half hour.
Okay.
Lucy, at that point, at 3 a.m., she started watching Madagascar because they put in an IV drip to finally give her some IV fluids, because what happened on our end was that they tried to give her some Tylenol to bring down the fever. And the doctor was also very concerned because her pulse was at 150, which is very high. And they gave her some Tylenol, and she threw it up 5 minutes later. So then they gave her a Zofran to deal with the nausea, and she kept that down. And then they brought her some apple juice to try to hydrate her and see if fluids would bring down her pulse. But in fact, she only took a couple sips of the apple juice and went to sleep. So it wasn't until the first ER doctor went off shift and the second one came on that they finally reluctantly decided that they should put in an IV and give her fluids. So that was at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The nurses came in, connected the IV in order to distract her while she was getting fluids through the IV. They put on a movie. And so at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was not sleeping, because you can't sleep when Madagascar is blaring at you.
It's some kind of crazy mixed up.
I really couldn't even read. I'd brought a book with me, and reading didn't really happen.
Who can read in the ER? I mean, gosh, I've spent nights in the ER. Sleep. You can't sleep in the ER.
No. Well, they didn't have a comfortable chair for me. It was just a hard chair that was next to her bed.
So it was around 3 that you finally got IV in her. She was watching a movie. I was up till 4:30 at that point. I couldn't go back to sleep until after I'd heard from you, and even then I couldn't sleep.
Yeah, they discharged us at 4:45.
Right.
And so we're walking out, and Lucy's saying, "Oh, it's really late. It might even be past midnight." And I said, "Oh dear, midnight was so long ago." And indeed, as we finally left the emergency room, it was light outside.
The sun had come up.
The sun had come up.
Oh, and then so it was a long day. Neither of us had gotten enough sleep that night, and you got less than I did, and it was a very long day. Now the final diagnosis, I guess, was they guessed that it was there's been a virus going around that most of our kids got the week before.
Ben and Anthony had each had a day of feeling kind of under the weather, and Ben had a rash that the pediatrician determined was probably viral. So the assumption is that she had a virus and then got dehydrated on top of that. And so the combination was her fever spiked. She continued to have a fever all day Monday and most of Tuesday, and didn't feel good until Wednesday.
But she recovered. She bounced back. She was a little weird today. Maybe allergies or something.
Everyone's got bad allergies because of the pollen. I'm really, really hoping it's just allergies and that she didn't pick up something additional in the ER, but you never know.
Ugh, yeah, no, that's why you don't want to go to the ER if you don't have to.
Yeah, we've gotten sick from the hospital before. When my sister had her appendix out, we all went to visit her, and then we all got this stomach bug.
You know, the nice thing about our local hospital, South Shore Hospital, is that they have a separate pediatric ER.
I love the pediatric ER.
With a separate pediatric ER waiting room.
Right. So you go into the general waiting room until they bring you to triage, but then after you've been triaged, you're in a separate pediatric wing. It's behind its own set of doors. You've got your own set of doctors and nurses, and they're very set up for children. They have little video monitors that they can bring so the kids can watch a video. Everything is very kid friendly, and the doctors and nurses are all really amazing.
Yeah, it is a good hospital. It's expensive, but it's a good hospital. I mean, so how many of them were born there? 3?
No, just 2.
Oh, just 2. That's right. Ben was at Norwood, the Catholic hospital. So yeah, so that was the medical update from the beginning of the week,
and that I would say colored my entire week. I think I've felt off all week because I just really haven't caught back up on that sleep, and the missed Monday has left my whole week feeling like
discombobulated.
Yeah.
So today, getting ready, me and Ben and Anthony, we're getting ready today to go Cub Scout camping tomorrow. In the morning, we're getting up early, getting the car, driving to New Hampshire, where we're going to be at Clark's Trading Post, which is it's one of those weird, not quite a theme parks that New Hampshire tends to have, where they have a few rides and a few attractions. There's a bear show, but they have a Cub Scout day where like troops or packs from all over come up, and they have special programming just for the Cubs, and they also have a Boy Scout day and that sort of thing. So our pack is going, and then we're going to stay overnight, Saturday night, camping there, and then come back Sunday, probably very early morning because it looks like it's going to rain, so we'll be not going to be any reason to hang around. And then, so today we had to pack up. Thankfully, the pack is taking care of the cooking, the food stuff. So we have to bring like snacks and things, but tent and sleeping bags and clothes. And when they're this young, Anthony is 8, and Ben is going to be 10 in under a month.
Yep.
It's still, they're not, they still need, especially Anthony needs to be led by the hand when it's packing time.
He gets overwhelmed, especially because he doesn't have a backpack right now. He needs a new one.
Yeah.
He needs a new water bottle. He lost his water bottle. So there were lots of little bumps.
Yeah. Doesn't have enough pants to wear. We need pants because it's going to be cold at night. That sort of thing. It's just, yeah. I'm certain we've forgotten things too. I mean,
you always forget something,
right? It's just Murphy's Law. I mean, it's so chaotic. But it's a little bit of a dry run for our big camping trip next month when we're going to Pennsylvania to Gettysburg. But for now, it's it's just me and the 2 boys. It's one day overnight. It's not a big deal. We'll get up early, get on the road. We'll probably stop at Dunkin' Donuts and get a treat and get some Slim Jims or something, and head on up. We'll have enough snacks for the road. So that's so when we talk again next week, we'll have lots to talk about how that went. We've done one camp trip once before with Cub Scouts where we did an overnight last year for the Chuck Wagon Derby, and then we attempted the Thanksgiving camp out. It was in a cabin. It was near Thanksgiving, so it was cold. And I was looking at the situation, and I'm thinking it was like we're all crammed in there. It was very primitive facilities, bathroom facilities. And I'm thinking they are not going to, Ben or Anthony will not stand for getting from the middle of the night, trudging through the cold to this outhouse. It would not have worked. And it was down the street. It was just so close by. It was at Blue Hills, the New England base camp, adventure camp that we talked about last week, that Bella is involved in. It's a scout camp too. So it was so close by. We're like, you know what, we're just going to head home because it was just too much. And the boys, I think, were very dubious about it. It was in a big cabin with all these Boy Scouts and younger kids, and even some of the girls from the pack, and they were uncomfortable, and so we just headed home. But this one, I'm very confident. I think we're gonna have a great time. And in fact, on Sunday, if the weather holds out, which I'm not sure it will, we're supposed to go to this place called Thornton Grove, which is a colonial era village that has basically disappeared, and all that's left are the foundations and other infrastructure, the base infrastructure of these buildings in the woods. So it's supposed to be pretty cool. I've seen some pictures, so I'm looking forward to checking that out if we can.
And meanwhile, the girls and I will have a quiet girls' weekend at home. Sophie's a little bit concerned because it won't be the same without the boys.
Sophie is a creature of habit.
Mhm.
She doesn't want to go to the farmer's market without us. That is like the farmer's market is so much fun, so many good things. We get our good food for the week, but she doesn't want to go if we're not going to be there.
She didn't want to go last weekend just because you weren't there, even though all the kids were there.
Right. I know. She's such a creature of habit. She doesn't deal with the last minute changes at all. So,
or even not even just last minute changes, but things that aren't the way that they're supposed to be.
Yes. So we'll hopefully tomorrow morning. Are you still going to go? I mean, have you decided whether you're going to go?
We
or
will
not?
see how freaked out Sophie is. She's also dealing with a little bit of either a cold or bad allergies right now, and so her
tolerance
for new things and novelty and change is lower than it is when she's feeling better. So we'll see. I'll play it by ear. Maybe we'll go do some other fun thing that doesn't involve
something that we would have done together.
Yeah, something that's just completely new and different. Or maybe we'll just stay home.
Is it okay if we listen to Peter Duck on the way up?
No, Peter Duck is our book for when all 7 of us are in the car. You can listen to something else.
I know we will. We'll listen to podcasts. Hey, kids, we're listening to Planet Money. Daddy needs to catch up.
Planet Money is actually kind of fun. They might like that.
That is actually fun. It's not actually necessarily one of those, but maybe we'll listen to an Art of Manliness podcast episode. That's one of the ones I listen to.
Or a Jimmy's Aiken's Mysterious World. They like that.
We could. That would be sort of interesting for me to listen to it. I don't often listen to my own podcasts except when I'm editing them. So that would be interesting to listen to. But maybe I'll let them I'll give them a treat and let them listen to one on the way up. Maybe not the Jimmy Hoffa one, because in that one Jimmy gets whacked. Jimmy Hoffa gets whacked. Jimmy Aiken's fine.
King Tut is good.
King Tut, yes. Who murdered King Tut? That might be a good one. Yeah, they'd probably enjoy that, including all of the strange Egyptian and Hittite names, which I am so proud of myself for being able to say them. I don't think Jimmy thought I could.
They like Egyptian stuff a lot. We spent a lot of time doing Egyptian stuff when we covered that for history, so it's fun.
Speaking of strange names and strange places, so I saw online this week someone had linked to this news story from Ireland. The island of Arranmore, which is off the west coast near Donegal, it's not that, it's like a mile off the coast of Donegal. It's not that far off.
Yeah, you can see it from shore.
And have you seen it before? Have you been there?
I've been to Donegal.
Okay, so
I haven't been to the Aran Islands though.
Oh, okay. So this island is one of these classic Irish islands where it's very old, seafaring people, very traditional. The fishing has gone down over the years. And the young people have moved away. And it was the island was in danger of going extinct. The village, the community was in danger of going extinct because they were more than 50% over the age of 60. I mean, it was very concerning. And so they recently worked with the telecom company called Three over there, where they installed the highest speed internet backbone in Ireland on this island. And the idea is and now they're advertising in the United States for people to come to live on Arranmore and take advantage of the high speed internet access and this wonderful quality of life. And they have these couple of great videos talking about how wonderful this place is. And I'm thinking to myself, that would be really cool. I wonder if I could do SQPN from Ireland.
I think it's something I would have jumped at when I didn't have kids. I'm not so sure. Like, that would be a great adventure. I'm not so sure about moving 5 kids to the Aran Islands.
I think we would increase the population of children under the age of 15 by 25%.
But also, I love Ireland. Like, my master's is in Irish studies. But the Aran Islands are a little bit short on trees. And I'm not sure how well I would live in a place with no trees. I mean, the ocean is gorgeous. The island is beautiful, but
you'd like to visit it?
It's a place I'd like to visit. I'm not sure I want to live there permanently. Even for a year, that I might get sad without trees. I am a tree lover. And I don't think I could ever live in a place that didn't have lots of big leafy trees.
How sad would be Isabella who doesn't have a tree to climb.
But there would be lots of cool birds. Isabella would be fine as long as she had lots of cool birds.
Yes, she would be clambering among the rocks. Anthony would jump in trying to become a seal.
And tide pools and seals.
Yes.
Honestly, I think that you could probably sell it to Bella.
Yes. The seals, the tide pools, the birds. Yes.
But it would be really hard for Sophie because change.
Well, I mean, obviously, they're looking at it from a practical standpoint. There are a lot of reasons why that wouldn't work. I mean, for one thing, I would be now, was that 4 or 5 hours in the future from even the East Coast people. Doing podcasts with Jimmy would become very difficult.
You would be waking up in the middle of the night to record your podcast.
Right, exactly. So that'd be one thing. Another thing is, family. My parents are elderly. I don't know that at this point in life it's a good idea for us to move far away from where my parents are. And I know your parents would come to visit, but my parents would not.
My parents would probably come to visit.
Yes.
But this would have been in my 20s and early 30s. This would have been my dream. I would have jumped at this so hard if I could find a job I would have found a job just so I could move to the Aran Islands.
Yes. I mean, it's a really cool idea. And one of the things I've always thought about with doing podcasting is as long as I have an internet connection, I can do the job. I mean, as long as I'm connected, it's not one of those jobs where I have to go to an office, so I can do it from anywhere. So being here is based on other things, not just the job. Being here outside of Boston, family, but also we would miss other things. We'd miss the culture. We'd miss the museums and the ability, the restaurants, the different cuisines.
But a year sabbatical could be kind of cool.
I could maybe do a year of it though. Yeah, I could probably do that. I could do a year anywhere, frankly. But and this interesting thing is a lot of places are starting to do this, where they're installing massive high speed internet backbones and then paying bounties for people to come there. Vermont has a $10,000 bounty to cover moving costs for people who move up there. And I saw something like that for someplace in Maine too. I mean, it's an interesting idea. And who knows? Maybe something like that's still in the future. Of
course, you have to think that if they're offering that much money, it's because people aren't coming there without the incentive. So what's the drawback that's keeping people from moving to these places?
Usually it's economic. I mean, the reason people don't move there is because there isn't a job for them there.
Partly, but I think it's also probably the winters in the case of Vermont and Maine.
Well, yeah. Well, there are people who love winter. There are people who love to ski.
I guess this is my native Texan coming out because
right.
I just think I like Vermont and Maine in the spring, summer, and fall, and maybe even in the winter for a short visit. But I don't think I could live with
March and April roll around and it's still a foot of snow.
Right.
Yeah.
I have my limits, and I think Massachusetts for me is about as far north as I can go.
Yes, I remember years ago when we were looking at when I was looking for a job, and one of the opportunities was possibly in Anchorage, Alaska.
I said, no,
you're going by yourself if you take that job.
I am not moving to Alaska. I'm sorry. I do have some really good friends who live in Anchorage, and I love you. I couldn't deal in the long winters.
Again, I would love to visit Alaska. I don't.
Someday I want to go visit, but I can't live. I get seasonal affective disorder in Massachusetts. I don't even want to think about how depressed I would be in an Alaska winter.
Okay, so Alaska and points north of here, so probably New Hampshire is out. We were in northern Massachusetts. That's where we were married. So that's about as far north as we're going to get from
right.
there.
I think that's the case.
Okay. All right. We've set some boundaries here. We've got that parallel going across there. All right. So one of the things I want to talk about is what we're going to talk about quite a lot probably on this show is cooking and eating, obviously, because we're not just throwing the food in the trash. So let's talk a bit about what we've been cooking lately. And just so everyone knows, you and I both love to cook.
Yes.
One of the things we share in common, that was one of the things that brought us together in our relationship.
Right. I do most of the cooking, but you cook a lot.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
Yeah.
Because there are nights when I just get to sit around and chill while you make dinner, and that's really awesome.
I do really enjoy cooking. It's just the way the division of labor works out is, especially because of when the years when I was commuting, that's just the way it worked. Is you were stay at home mom and cooked,
Right.
so that's the way it worked. But the nice thing is with the nice weather, and I mean we've finally had a nice spring. Before a few weeks ago, before in May basically, it was raining all the time.
My southern friends are laughing because this is no longer spring. This is summer.
Yeah.
In the South.
Well,
this is summer in Texas. Summer starts in May. So this whole spring starting in May.
Yeah.
thing.
Well, June 21st is still a week away as we record this, so it's still spring.
Okay, but
technically,
that's astronomical spring, not meteorological spring.
it's meteorological spring in Texas. But here, that's also to be fair, in New England, Junes I remember Junes that have been heat wave 90s, etc., etc.
That's not been this June.
But this June has been a glorious June. I mean, we've had days or evenings of rain, but so many good days. And the reason I bring that up when we're talking about cooking is because I've been able to grill a lot.
Right.
And in fact, except for the last couple of days, because we had rain last night, I remember there was a period of a few days there where I grilled. We didn't cook on the stove apart from some side. We didn't cook a main dish on the stove. Put it that way. For a few days, like 4 or 5 days, 3 or 4 days at least.
We had lamb on the grill.
Yep.
We had hamburgers and hot dogs on the grill.
And we do that but once a week now. It's sort of taken the place of pasta for us.
Right. Is the default dinner when you just need something kind of quick to throw on and you, for whatever reason, scheduling reasons, you don't have time to like do something elaborate? When I'm brain dead and I don't feel like cooking, burgers and dogs.
So we do burgers and dogs. We do pork chops a lot. Sometimes we'll do some steak if we can get that at a decent price in the sale bin. Chicken. Did we do a whole chicken recently? We did. We did a whole chicken on the grill recently.
Ribs.
Oh, the ribs are really good. I love doing those ribs. They take a while, of course, but the smoked rib.
And then my favorite actually is a side dish on the grill. It's the eggplant, grilled eggplant.
So this eggplant dish is a hybrid of something that couple recipes I picked up from what's Milk Street Kitchen, Christopher Kimball's Milk Street. And so it's a combination of a Lebanese eggplant dish and a Persian or Iranian eggplant dish, I think it was. So you take 2 eggplants, you slice them in half lengthwise, you score them almost all the way through, and then you brush on about a 1/4 cup of olive oil so it soaks it all in. Then you slap them cut side down on the grill for like 10 minutes until they get kind of really almost blackened.
Black. They look black. They do not look appetizing.
Right, not at that point. So then you take them and you do a 2-part 2-level fire. I only do charcoal. So all the charcoal's on one half of the grill. And so you take it off of the hot part and then you move it to the part without the coals directly underneath with the cut side up, and then you brush on more olive oil, but this olive oil had
minced garlic.
It's soaking in it. Okay, so and you getting that garlic all in those crevices. That garlic's only going to get nice and crunchy and baked. So good. And then you cook it for like 40 minutes until it's really tender. Then you scoop out the flesh, and then you put it in a bowl with a sweet and sour mint dressing. This is the Persian part of the dish, I'm pretty sure, which is made from cider vinegar, honey, and mint. Which it's a very interesting.
It's really great flavor.
Yeah, and then you add to that dressing, you also add some cilantro and some chili garlic sauce, that Asian chili garlic sauce. This comes from the same people who make sriracha. It's so a little bit of that, and so you have this spicy, sweet, sour, rich, incredibly rich, garlicky spread. You can put it on bread. You can eat it with the with pork chops. I mean, it's so good.
It goes with just about any meat. It makes a nice side dish for Indian curries or for Middle Eastern dishes, or really just for anything. I eat it with my hamburgers too.
Yes. So that's another dish we've been making a lot. We make that now about once a week.
I pretty much get eggplants every time I go to the grocery store just to make grilled eggplant.
So one of the dishes was that Chiang Mai chicken which has it's the marinade that smells awful. Remember that? I think it's like has like a half a cup of fish sauce or something in it.
Yeah, it makes Ben go running, screaming from the house when you make it.
It smells terrible. Like the first time I made it, I'm like, oh, I might have made a mistake here. but then when you cook it, it's so good. It was really good. I mean, the fish sauce gives it that umami punch.
That's one of those like 50% dishes where like half the kids will eat it and the other half go make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Oh, so we should explain this. We have, because there's 7 of us, one of us, Lucy, is almost always having to eat something different from the rest of us. But we have this formula that we do, which is we call it, a percentage dish. So a dish that everybody will eat, like burgers and dogs, that's 100% dish. Everyone will eat that. There are dishes where only half of them will eat it. Where 2 out of 3 of them, or I mean 2 or 3 out of the 5 of them will say, I don't like it. If 2 of them don't want it, then we say that's a 50% dish, and we serve it anyway. And if you don't want, if you take a bite and you still don't want it, you'll make yourself a peanut butter jelly sandwich or something like that. Generally, we don't do dishes that are less than that. Occasionally, if you and I really want something that we want, we'll make something where we'll eat that and then we'll make something for the rest of them to eat.
Oh yeah, I'll make something like mac and cheese or something that all of them will eat.
But that's rare. We don't very often make 2 different dinners.
And yet at the same time, we do like to eat spicy foods and very flavorful foods, and we don't necessarily we don't have a rule that everybody has to, this is what dinner is and there's nothing else. Everyone has to eat it, because we recognize that a lot of the flavors we like are really strong for kids with sensitive palates, and it's not just to expect them to choke it down.
Right. And we love to experiment with different ethnic cuisines and all the different dishes, and we don't want to be held back by trying to find something that bland that the super tasters will eat.
If we went for only 100% meals that everybody likes, we would be
pasta, tacos, burgers and dogs. There's got to be Asian noodle soup.
Yeah, a couple soups,
chicken thighs.
It would be very boring.
It would be very, very boring. Speaking of chicken thighs, that's another one of the things that we do a lot of, and I really am very pleased with how we've come up with this method.
Chicken thighs are my other default. It's a really easy no-brainer meal that I don't have to spend a lot of time on, but that comes out really nicely. I usually buy just the big family pack of thighs, and we settled on thighs because we've tried lots of different cuts of meat, because bone-in, skin-on thighs are cheap. You can buy a big package of 10 or 12 of them for less than $10, and everyone will eat them, and they're really easy to prepare. Quarters, you always end up with an uneven distribution where some kids get drumsticks, which don't have that much meat, and other kids get the thighs, which have a lot of meat, and then they fight about
which are bigger than the thigh. The thighs and the quarters are bigger than the thighs in the package of just thighs.
Right. So anyway, I do a very simple preparation. I do salt and pepper and garlic powder and onion powder and maybe an herb like oregano or an herb blend like bouquet garni or herbe de Provence, and sprinkle it on the thighs, both sides and under the skin. And then I put them in the oven.
So we have a half sheet pan with a rack. That's very important.
I put them on the rack so that they're not sitting in the fat as the fat drips off of the thighs and the juices, which keeps them from getting soggy.
Soggy chicken is just not yummy.
And I cook it at a high temperature, 425, for about half an hour, 45 minutes, until the skin gets nice and crisp.
Crackly.
With really dark brown spots on it. And the kids love it. In fact, they like to eat it hot. So about 5 minutes after it comes out of the oven, I call out to the kids, "Chicken skin's done, kids." And they all come running, and I pull the skin off of the burning hot thighs with a pair of tongs, and they hold it in their hands like,
ouch, 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 ouch,
ouch, ouch, ouch, ouch, and they eat the crunchy chicken skin. But if you wait until it gets cold, it's flabby and gross.
Yeah. It's only good when it's hot right off the chicken,
Hot and crispy.
hot and crispy. And then everyone gets a chicken thigh for dinner, and then we usually have some vegetables and salad and that sort of stuff. But afterward, this is the genius. This is the secret. So the pan now that we've cooked it in is get all of the juices from the chicken. So you take those after dinner, that pan is cooled. You pour all those juices off, and there's usually a good amount of it, into a container and put it in the fridge. And then tomorrow morning, when you come to that fridge, there's going to be a disc of chicken fat on the top, which my Jewish grandmother would have called schmaltz, right?
Right.
And then under that is going to be a gelatinous of the juices. All of the collagens that has all collected there is going to be under that, and that is pure chicken flavor. You can take that and you can put that in your soup. You can put that in other chicken dishes.
You can make a gravy out of it, and sometimes we actually don't save it for the next day. We just make a pan gravy and serve it for dinner if I have extra time.
That's true. You throw some garlic cloves. If you throw some garlic cloves in the bottom of the pan while it's roasting, you can just mash those into it and make a little pan sauce with that, and then put some lemon juice in that. That's
lemon juice, garlic cloves, and some chopped herbs like some chopped cilantro or chopped parsley or chopped mint or something.
That makes a good pan sauce. But if you save it, then it's just this power pack of chicken flavor that you save in your fridge for soups and for sauces. If you're making certain like a dish and you want a sauce for the dish, or
I add it to my beef stroganoff to add that little extra punch of flavor.
Because it doesn't have to be a chicken dish.
Right. I add it to chicken soups. My avgolemono soup with extra chicken schmaltz and chicken drippings. Really good.
Yeah, a little bit of the schmaltz, a little bit of the chicken fat can go along.
It's kind of like bouillon. It's really intense flavors, so you can actually water it down with a little bit of water and
yeah. So that's one of my top 10 of all food cooking tips is that's one of the things we've learned is to look at this stuff we're throwing away, and maybe you don't need to throw it away. That's the other thing we do is with like the vegetable ends when we're chopping them for different dishes. We save some of them. Not everything is good to save, but things like carrots and onions and garlic skins and
celery
and things like that. Save them, put them in a bag in the freezer, and when we're making chicken stock.
Right. We also save all those thigh bones that the kids have gnawed on. This might gross some people out who are very germ phobic, but I just collect all the thigh bones at the end of dinner. I throw them in a plastic bag in the freezer. And when I'm ready to make chicken stock, I throw them into a pot, put some water on it, and they're going to boil I usually boil
hours.
Overnight.
Yeah.
It's going to kill any germs that are on those bones.
Right.
They will be disinfected better than any surgical instrument is going to be disinfected. And it's really good flavor. So I always save all the bones from our chickens and use them to make chicken stock.
Yeah, those are, So, I mean, man, I think we've really hit on something with the way that we, there's a frugality in that, but there's also, I mean, even if it wasn't frugality, it's the flavor. There's so much yummy in all of that.
Right. Homemade,
throw it away.
Homemade chicken broth, when you boil the bones overnight with your leftover vegetables, it beats store-bought chicken broth hands down.
7 ways to Sunday, certainly. So tonight we had clam chowder, though, which is really good. You made clam chowder from scratch.
I did. I bought some clams at the grocery store, and I had some cod in the freezer, and I sautéed some I cooked up some bacon, fried up the bacon, and then in the bacon fat, I sautéed onions, celery, carrots, and garlic. I added about 4 potatoes, and then some of my homemade chicken stock. And what else did I? Oh, I had some white wine and some bay leaves, some herbs, some Old Bay seasoning, which is really perfect for fish dishes. And then I simmered that until all the potatoes were starting really soft and falling apart. And then I threw in my clams and my fish, cooked it for another 5 or 6 minutes.
Pulled out Lucy's part because she can't have dairy.
Lucy can't eat dairy. So she always gets her own little tureen of soup at her place. And then I added about 3/4 of a stick of butter and about a cup of heavy cream and another cup of milk, and yum. And
Yeah.
served it with fresh scallions from the garden, which Bella likes to go out and cut for me.
And a loaf of bread from the store yesterday, which was nice. And it was, yeah, a yummy meal. It was really good. It's, it's good, nice Friday clam chowder.
It's not entirely meat free, but you could leave out the bacon. But why would you want to?
Right. And you could use salt pork, and we actually have some, but I'm saving that for making baked beans at some point.
Yeah, I didn't want to use up the salt pork that you got for the baked beans.
Yeah. So that's what we've been cooking. Every once in a while we'll talk about some different recipes, or if you got requests for stuff, and we're always posting pictures of stuff we've made on on our Instagram or on Facebook and that sort of thing. So if you ever see anything and you want to know more about it, or if we find something, make something interesting, find something interesting, a new recipe or something like that, we'll bring it up. So let's talk about what we're reading. You were telling me earlier today about an interesting, was it an article or the book about biblical translation?
Right. Actually, I did read a little bit when I was in the ER with Lucy early on, when we first got there, before they finally got the Tylenol into her and she started to feel better. She slept. And so I actually got some reading done. And this is a book that my friend Leah Labresco Sargent recommended. It's called The Art of Biblical Translation. And I'm not recalling the author's name. But the author, his primary academic specialty is actually literature. He focuses on 20th century novels, but he knows Hebrew and has translated Hebrew. And I can't remember the ins and outs of his story, but somehow he got roped into writing an article about problems with translation in the book of Genesis. And his thesis is really interesting. He basically argues that most biblical scholars who are making translations into English nowadays are not as well versed in literature in English. So he says that the King James Bible is still held by a lot of people to be, in terms of the beauty of its language, the poetry of its language in English, is still one of the most beautiful books written in the English language. And no Bible translation into English afterwards has as much literary quality. Now, they might be more theologically correct, but they lose something in the translation that the King James Bible had. And his argument is that the translators of the King James Bible were, in their own rights, not only biblical scholars of the biblical languages, but they were also men of letters. They wrote in English. They read in English. This was the age of Shakespeare and Johnson and Donne. They were steeped in some of the most beautiful English literature ever. And that comes through in the translation. And modern scholars, because the modern academy is so much more focused, you've got your theology department over here and you've got your English department over here, and people don't tend to spend a lot of time reading outside of their discipline. And so he argues that contemporary scholarship is lacking in the sense of the possibilities of the English language as it is spoken and written today. And what I really liked about this book was that he gets into very close readings of the biblical texts to illustrate his point. Now, I only read the first chapter or two.
Is that this book here that I pulled up, The Art of Biblical Narrative by Robert Alter?
Yes, Robert Alter.
Okay.
That's it. So, for example, he looks at a particular passage in Genesis which is describing Rachel at the well. And she's getting the water for the camels. And the way the Hebrew syntax works, it's a lot of phrases that are linked by the word and. And it gives a sense of her in a rush, rushing here, rushing there, going back and forth, because you have to draw lots and lots of water to water a whole troop of camels. And he said, and then he points out, he quotes several different Bible translations in which the biblical translators had changed the syntax so that instead of just a bunch of phrases linked by and, they did what's more common in English, which is to use subordinate clauses. Therefore, and then, thus, so that, those kinds of things. And it changes the rhythm and it changes the flow of the language. And he argues that he actually quotes one biblical scholar who says, well, of course we had to change it because it would sound stupid in English to have a whole bunch of phrases linked by and. And Alter, being a scholar of 20th century novels, says, are you kidding me? The final chapter in James Joyce's classic novel Ulysses has this long soliloquy by Molly Bloom in which she repeats the word and it's considered one of the most beautiful passages in modern English. It's quoted and excerpted just as a standalone passage because of the beauty of its prose. And so he says, of course you can do that in English.
So the book, it was written in 1981.
Right. It's not a
so it's almost 40 years old now. And almost it's 2021 will be 40 years. So it's 38 years old.
Okay, that makes me feel really old. My baby brother was born in 1984, so 1981 doesn't seem that long ago.
Yes, it is a long time. And so the Wikipedia article has it says that it's revolutionized the way that scholars read the Bible. And this quotes this guy saying that by most conventional measures, number of books sold, favorable reviews, frequency of citation, it is hard to imagine a more successful academic book than his Art of the Biblical Narrative. I wonder how much it has influenced translations that have shown up after that, like the New Revised Standard Version and the NASB and some of NIV and some of these other books, translations of the Bible that have been made since then.
I would love to follow up on this book and read more about it. I'm hoping to finish the book too, although I haven't really had much chance to dig into it this week since Monday. It was Sunday night.
And so he didn't just write about this, he put it into practice.
Right. He actually translated, he started off writing a bunch of articles, standalone pieces, and he was just like, I'm not going to translate the whole Old Testament. I'm going to translate this passage in the book of Genesis. Okay, then I'll do this passage too. And okay, I'll do this book, something from the Psalms or something from this or that or the other, something from Kings. But then at a certain point, he kind of looked at it and said, wow, I've done a good 2/3 of the Bible. Why not just do the rest? And so he was hired to do a critical edition of the Bible. And he said, I want to do critical editions of these books, but with my own translation, because there is no translation out there that would work, because that does justice to the literary quality of the Bible, to the poetic devices that are used in Hebrew.
And so this translation just came out last year. So it took him, and it says he wrote it over the course of 2 decades. So for 2 decades, he talked about it. And then for 2 decades, he did the translation by himself. I mean, a one-man translation of the Bible is a unique circumstance. That doesn't happen. I know a little bit about biblical translation and how that works. I studied a little bit of it. It's fascinating to me to have that.
I'm curious. Now, in the Facebook discussion, which introduced me to this book, somebody said that they had actually picked up his translation and they found The Art of Biblical Narrative a much more compelling book than his actual translation. Now, I'm just repeating hearsay. I might agree or not agree with that particular commenter. So I don't know how successful his translation is as a translation, but it's certainly an interesting thesis. He writes very convincingly about the problems, the textual problems, the translation problems, and I love thinking about translation.
Sometimes it's easier to diagnose the problem than it is to come up with a solution.
Well, also his ability to think critically might not be commensurate with his ability to write really good English prose. I mean, some people are good critics and some people are good poets or prose writers, and we all have our talents. Like, I can't write fiction to save my life, and I would really stink at it. But I think I'm a pretty good critic of fiction. So, you know.
One of the things it's worth bearing in mind when talking about these things is with biblical translation, the complexity of the problem. See, and I know some people listening probably know this, but just, you know, for everyone else, the Bible wasn't a book that just sat on, you know, St. Peter's desk. You know, there wasn't like a Bible back then. What we had were hundreds of books, manuscripts, hundreds of different ones. So what we have to work with today are something like 5,000 individual texts that range in size from like a scrap of papyrus with one verse on it, or even part of a verse on it, to complete books. The oldest we have is, I think, the Isaiah book that they found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was a complete text. But other than that, almost every text from the Bible we have is hundreds of years after the manuscript, hundreds of years of copying the book over and over by hand from when Matthew set pen to paper, sort of in that way, however you want to phrase it. So, and then not all of these different copies, we have multiple copies of different books, and not all of them agree. And so what the guys who assemble the critical edition, which is this is the definitive Hebrew Old Testament, this is the definitive Greek New Testament, what they have to do is kind of make decisions about what is the right one to use.
I would like to point out, though, that Alter only translated the Hebrew Bible. He didn't actually do the New Testament. It's just the Old Testament and that part of the Old Testament, which I don't believe it's the Septuagint.
Right. Although, yeah, I mean, a biblical scholar would consult the Septuagint, which is a Greek version of the Old Testament, and just to see, you know, to look at everything. But where his was to convey the literary style of the original Hebrew text in English, he probably wouldn't have done that. So it's very interesting. So then you have that, and so then someone has to come along and take that Hebrew text and the Greek text, the critical edition or the standardized edition, and then translate that into English or Spanish or French or German or whatever language that we're coming up with, which is why we have Revised Standard Version, New Revised Standard Version, New International Version, NAB, NASV, all these different versions, because different people make different decisions about how to convey the same thing from a different language 2,000 years ago or more.
I also am slightly amused in that both of us have our different perspectives on this, because I have a degree in English and you have a degree in theology. Right. And our biases are clearly showing in this conversation. I'm really interested in the literary aspects and you're very interested in the textual, theological aspects. I'm just amused.
If I had gone on in further academics and theology, I probably would have been a biblical scholar of some sort. I've always loved that, fascinated by that. I love the history of it. So yeah, but it also shows how we mesh very well too. The interests are complementary in that sense.
Right. Yeah.
So what else have you other reading you've done? You said you haven't had a lot of chance to do a lot of reading this week, but what else are you doing in the way of reading type things?
So I mentioned in our last podcast that I've been listening to Moby Dick as an audiobook, and I continued that. Isabella and I listened to the chapter on the ship when Ishmael and Queequeg are introduced to the Pequod, which is a good half-hour long chapter in the audiobook. And that took us basically all the way to her camp on Thursday morning. And then on my own time, I've been listening to Brideshead Revisited, the audio version. A friend of mine created a Facebook reading group, which is my new favorite way of reading books, with a book club. And this Facebook group is exclusively devoted to Brideshead Revisited. And so we're going to read the book, talk about it, and then the page will sort of go defunct. I'm assuming it's not like an ongoing book club. An ongoing book club. It's a one-time thing. This is my new favorite model for reading books with other people. I'm also trying to organize another reading group with a friend who wants to read about pedagogical theory. Sounds exciting, doesn't it?
Wow, fascinating. Fascinating. Let me talk about some Star Wars. So
So I've been listening to Sue Brideshead Revisited and commentary on it. That's my
cool,
exciting reading this week.
I've started a new book. I'm reading a Star Wars book because I'm just as a palate cleanser and to kind of get hyped up and excited for the episode 9 coming out, the Rise of Skywalker later this year. But so I know
that my friend Rosamund Hodge just released a new collection of short stories yesterday, and so I downloaded that to my Kindle right away, and I've read the first couple of those, and really, really good. If you've read any of Rosamund's novels, Cruel Beauty was her first novel, and then she's written Crimson Bound, and I'm blanking on her other titles.
We'll put the links in the show notes.
But this is just a collection that she put together of her short fiction, most of which has been published in other venues, but it's a self-published collection. But I'm sometimes leery of self-published works. This is not one to be leery of. It is a more mature collection. It's for adults, not, and maybe older, mature teens. It's not for kids. So I'm not going to be sharing it with the kids.
Yeah.
It's really good. If you like kind of creepy, kind of supernatural, interesting world building with fun twists, this is for you. If you don't have a taste for really dark and creepy, you might want to give it a pass though.
Now, her other books, like Cruel Beauty, was sort of a magical world take on Beauty and the Beast, right?
It's kind of a retelling of, well, she borrows themes both from Beauty and the Beast and from the story, which is really the basis for Beauty and the Beast, which is the Cupid and Psyche story. And it's got a lot of that flavor of ancient Greece and Rome, the sort of a classical flavor to it. But it also draws from the English folk tradition, like the story of Tam Lin, who's stolen away by the fairies. And so it's a, as Rosamund likes to say, it's an evil boyfriend story. Kind of like Blackbeard, the girl who is forced by her family to marry the demon in order to placate him so he will not attack anyone else. And, things ensue.
Yes, and Rosamund is like you said, she's a friend, that via Facebook and sister of a friend. So
and a graduate from my alma mater, so we have some things in common.
She went to UD. Ring the bell.
Yes,
bingo.
But I think she's one of my favorite current novelists, and not just because I know her, but just because I think her writing is really fresh, original, and exciting.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to be it from us. We had some other stuff we could have talked about too, about some TV shows that I watched. I didn't watch it. There's not a whole lot new right now, but I'm going to save those for next time. We'll bring those up because there's some interesting things that we watched because we're just about an hour now, so I want to keep it under that. So that's it from us. What do you think of our discussion? Any feedback you'd like to give us on any of the things we've talked about, including cooking and books and biblical translations and all of that sort of stuff? We'd love to hear from you. So you can let us know what you think by going to sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS, or the SQPN Facebook page, which is facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can also find links to our blogs on the show notes and the links to the books and other things that we've talked about on our show notes at sqpn.com. And you can send us an email at bets, BETTS, @sqpn.com. Please, if you get a chance, please write a review of our show at iTunes. Share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow our audience, grows the community of listeners, and makes us a much more fun, interesting place when we have that feedback and the interactions that come from that. So we'd really appreciate that if you could do that in the podcast apps, in iTunes, on Google Play, and the various places where you can write reviews. Well, until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.